Uh, and the swage thing's got a Zerk fitting on it, so that's great. No problems there. You know, put some grease in it once in a while. But then they show this main bearing grease point and crank grease point. Well, you got two main bearings, and then you got the crank as well. So it's not just one main bearing. And the thing says, check all the locations noted below before each reloading session to ensure they are properly lubricated. Okay, well, the main bearing, the main bearing, it's like buried inside the what you call it, the case. It's almost like a crankcase. It's massive. So you look on the parts diagram, you got roller bearings in there. You got roller bearings on the main bearings, and on the crank you got roller bearings, but you can't see them. It's you can see a little grease oozing out of them, but you can't see the bearings. How do you know if they're really, if the grease is getting old, turning black, getting hard? You really can't tell. And you're supposed to check it daily, each loading session, maybe twice a day. I don't know. But to me, that really seems silly. It's like buying a car and then opening up the user manual, and it points to the wheels, has an arrow pointing to a wheel, and that says, yeah, check and lubricate daily, your wheel bearings. Well, you can't check your wheel bearings without taking things apart. And it's the same thing here. You can't really check those bearings without disassembling the whole machine, to get to the bearings, and re-lubricate them or whatever. So it just seems kind of silly that they say, yeah, make sure it's lubricated. You got like a 32nd of an inch clearance on either side of these, the crankcase and so on, to, you can see some grease oozing out, but what are you supposed to do? Cram grease in that crack? That's not going to get it to the bearing. So anyway, that bit of maintenance thing, come on, Mark 7, let's get with the program. Put Zerk fittings in there or something to get grease on those bearings, or, like a car, just make it so that, you can go 100,000 miles without checking your wheel bearings or whatever. Anyway, a little bit of a rant there. Sorry, but overall, it's a good machine. And it's got 10 stations. Did I mention that? It's got 10 stations, so you can have a powder check and a bullet feeder with a bullet seeding die and a crimp die. So, that's the biggest selling point. That's what I really like about it. But it's a beautiful machine. I mean, they're very proud of it. It's all CNC machined. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's just gorgeous. But at the same time, Elon Musk has a saying, with the SpaceX and Tesla cars. He says the best part is no part, and that does make some sense. If you can accomplish something without a whole bunch of parts, and do it simply, that's better. And Mark 7, they've done a fine job. Like I said, this is a beautiful machine, but everything on it is CNC'd, and you've got I don't know, like 1,000 CNC parts, and it's a complicated machine. There are a lot of parts. It's beautiful, but it's complicated. There's a lot of parts, and I don't think there's anything wrong with a good casting. The Dillon, it's all cast parts. The whole frame of the thing is just cast and then machined appropriately, and the tool heads are just aluminum cast and then machined, and they function just great. So my thinking is there's nothing wrong with castings. Maybe you should consider it, because it might simplify the machine and make it cheaper, because this is not, it was a hard pill to swallow, the the price of this thing. So, and I have yet to look forward to buying tool heads and things for caliper conversion. So that's going to be fun too. But overall, you know, I'm now that I've gone through the frustration and the grief and the and got it figured out, and I know my method for setting this up with all the dies touching. It's kind of unorthodox, and it's a little bit tricky. I mean, you got to be careful that you're not mashing those dies and applying excessive pressure somewhere. So I'm really careful that I'm not going so far as to bend or break anything. But as it is, it works. I mean, my bullet seating depth on the Dillon, I was pretty happy. I use a bullet comparator for to compare seating depths, and on the Dillon, I was getting maybe around 8mm variants. I'd take I'd randomly check like 10 loaded rounds, check the bullet seating depths, and getting no more than 8mm. I was pretty happy with that. On this machine now, as it's working now, I'm getting about half that. I'm getting like 3, 4. It's working really well. I think that bullet seating die kind of making contact, and that shell plate making contact ever so slightly with the base is really giving me consistent results. So anyway, it's and now that the resistance isn't so much, and that resistance was making me uncomfortable, but now the way I've got it set up, it's the resistance isn't bad. The shell plate, it kind of goes down. The tool head goes down, all the dies do their work, then the tool head goes up, and the shell plate kind of comes up on the spring and then rotates. So it's not like you're going to get powder or anything underneath here that's going to bind and muck things up, because the shell plate is actually, before it indexes, it's rising up probably higher than you would have it if you just set it such that the plate wasn't wobbling. So I'm more comfortable now with the shell plate kind of rising up before it indexes, and then the dies pushing it back down than I was before. But out of the factory, it was all over the place. I didn't set this thing till I needed to, because the shell plate was just wobbling around. I was chasing my tail. But now life is good. Everything's working great. I'm liking this machine more every time I use it, and I'm glad I didn't return it. I mean, at one point I bought it through a Double Alpha Academy, and those guys are great too. And I mean, after a couple of days of pulling my hair out with this thing, I was about to give up. I called Double Alpha and said, I'm having all these problems. I'm a very unhappy customer. I want to return it. And they gave me an RMA number. It was set to go back, and but I'm glad I persevered and got this thing working, because it is a nice machine. Now, I've told you my opinion about that Hornady case feeder. They can keep that thing. So, and Double Alpha was very nice about that. They are exchanging the Hornady case feeder for a Dillon. They also sell Dillon products. So I've got another Dillon case feeder coming, so I can put this thing back on my 650, and I'm good to go. So thank you, Double Alpha Academy, for doing that. Anyway, that's it, and I hope this proves to be helpful to someone. If you get one of these things, I think it helps to kind of better understand how it's working, and I hope I've saved you some frustration.